So hey guys, I welcome you to another conversation series inside on my YouTube channel, The Memory Bits. And today I'm too grateful to have Mr. Saurabh with us. He doesn't need an introduction as such. He's quite active on LinkedIn. He has been attending a lot of sessions, conferences all around, and you can see him on LinkedIn, very very active. But just for the sake of formality, I will give his introduction. He's actually heading marketing dairy at Britannia. He's an alumnus of IIM Indore, and he has got tons of experience in sales and marketing across different companies. I welcome you, Saurabh, and thank you for taking out time on this weekend.
Sure, my pleasure. Absolutely, Rishikesh, great to be here.
Yeah, Saurabh, we'll start with the first thing that we all will want to know from you is that you tell us a little bit about your career journey and what was that which actually triggered your entry into marketing.
Sure. So it's an interesting story, and I love to joke about the fact that in an ideal world, I would have been doing research in physics, and I think with my glasses, I probably looked the part as well. But how it panned out is I I wanted to do pure sciences. I got a 97 in my physics in my 12th grade, and I was all set to do superstrings and black holes, right? And I ended up in Delhi College of Engineering. And it's only when you enter engineering that you realize that there's a large difference between pure sciences and applied sciences, right? And I realized that pure science is interesting, but applied sciences is not so much so. And I didn't see myself sitting in Himachal and trying to get a dam made, right? And I actually spoke to a hell of a lot of people during those the first 3 years of my engineering just to figure out what my options are. And when I came across a bunch of MBAs, I was like, yeah, these are guys which are more like me. They like to have conversation. They have diverse interests. They like to discuss and debate topics which are of practical interest. And yeah, I felt that this is something that I could do well. Yeah. Now, from there, I actually, asked my dad, what's this, MBA all about? And he showed me some of his books. He retired as an admiral from the Indian Navy, but he was doing his MBA from IGNOU. Right. And when I saw the stuff on, the 4Ps of marketing and all that jazz, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I can do this stuff. Right. And it is from there that I sort of picked up a passion for marketing. I joined IIM Indore and I was one of the early batches. So we had just 57 students in our batch. Right. It's a very small batch. But I ended up becoming the marketing club secretary. Then I founded the marketing fair called Utsaha. And I, made a bunch of games, got some lectures organized, and so on and so forth. So I, I got started on the journey towards, making my marketing. In my campus recruitments, I in fact got a couple of jobs from Maruti and Madura Garments, but I actually accepted Wipro at a much lower package because I was very clear I want to start my journey from FMCG. Right. And I then subsequently moved from Wipro Consumer to Cadbury's. I did about 10 years there, did a couple of years with Diageo. And the last 3.5, 4 years I've been with Britannia. So it's been a very interesting journey. But, broadly, it has been along the lines of what I sort of planned for myself, in my third year of engineering. So I'm quite grateful that, I've not had to look back ever since that particular decision was made.
That's something which is so great, actually, Saurabh. You actually achieved what you planned for. But I have got a question, which is just, aside this professional thing, is when did you develop this, this?
See, I think all brands need key brand assets. And if you are trying to build yourself into one, you might as well get one yourself, right?
So when did that trigger come? Like, you have to grow your mustache.
So actually, it's quite funny because bulk of my life till about just last 2 years back, I've actually been clean shaven, and in fact, I never really thought that I will get any facial hair in the first place. Right now, my wife happens to be an Instagram influencer, and she actually pushed me, saying that why don't you try to get a beard or something going. And we were in Goa, I think about roughly 3 years back on vacation, and her birthday comes in the first week of January. So I just joked to her that as a birthday gift, I'm gonna give you a beard, right? And that beard grew into a mustache. Got all of this going, and now she hates my mustache, and I refuse to let go of it. So I got my revenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we'll come back again. So the second thing is that we all would like to know is that, what are some of your core strengths? And
Correct.
yeah.
There is this lovely book that I recommend everybody read, right? It's called The Strength Finder, right? And the Strength Finder is actually the methodology on which Gallup psychometric surveys are based on, right? It's a beautiful book, and it really covers how we actually get the personality that we have, right? And it was really intriguing to me when I read that book, where it said that at the age of 5 you have double the neuron connections in your brain than you have right now, right? At 5 years of age, when your brain is fully developed, you have infinite potential. You can be anybody whom you want to be. And then the neuron connection that you don't use, right, from the age of 5 to 13, actually molds your personality, right? Because what you don't use, those are the connections that wither away. And the connection that you keep by the age of 13 actually makes you into the person that you are. And then post the age of 13, your personality rarely changes. You can become more of what you are, maybe less of what you are, but really, it's your personality which gets sort of sorted then. Yeah. And, the very interesting part about this book is that they give you a code for an online psychometric test. When you do the test, it tells you the five clusters which broadly define what your personality is. Right. And when I did that, it was really intriguing for me, because, I think it helped articulate the person that I always thought I was. So, I'm a communicator, I'm a visualizer, I'm a futurist. I'm a kind of a person for which, the future is alive and kicking right now. Right. I'm an extremely social individual. I love to build a lot of connections, and I'm a connector. I like to get my diverse connections together, and frankly speaking, the person you are, or the personality you have, right, does not mean you can only get one career choice versus the other. It just means whichever career choice you make, your approach towards solving problems is likely to be linked to your personality, right? So, for example, if I am faced with a problem, right, I get 10 people into the room because I'm a social individual, right? If I have to build a case study I have to solve a marketing challenge, I start with the future. What does the future look like? And then I work backwards. If I need to convince people, instead of using rational arguments, I would really use the power of my interpersonal connections and commentary to sort of weave in a conversation where we try to find a win-win, right? So we all have unique ways of approaching our challenges, and this book really helps you identify what your core strengths are and what's your signature trait likely to be.
Got it. So guys, do give this a read, and do find out what are your core strengths like, because we all are confused throughout our life. What are we good at?
Right.
The next thing, Saurabh, like, the key skills that you think are crucial to develop for a manager as one goes through his or her career journey.
So no, this is interesting. See, one is the personality that you have, which is what I talked about, right? But one of the things which I learned in my early on in my leadership journey, and thanks to the HR head at Cadbury, right? I joined Cadbury just 15 months after my stint with Wipro Consumer. And as a young individual wanting to understand what's career is all about, I had this interaction with the HR head at Cadbury at that time. Yeah. And I sort of asked him that, what are the skills which are important? The very same question that he just asked me. And he says that, Saurabh, let me tell you a secret. There are only 3 skills that you will actually hone in your leadership journey all throughout. Right. And these will play out in different forms. So when you start your journey, the first 3 to 4 years of your life, or 5 years, it's only going to be about drive. Yeah. And drive is really only about passion, about perseverance, trying to ensure that nothing stands between you and success, where you really feel that the world starts and ends with you, and you will do whatever it takes. Yeah. And that's where drive comes in. As you go through your middle management career, what starts kicking in is influence. Right. And influence is when you realize that, suddenly the world does not start and end with me. It is actually other people that are crucial for my success. And many of those other people are going to be at the same level, and more often than not senior to you. Right. And that's when influence comes in. Yeah. Where you try to find a win-win, where you try to get to build a genuine interest in what the other people's motivators are, rather than what you want to achieve out of it. Right. So that's when influence comes in. And it's in the back half of your career, maybe about maybe say 10, 15 years down the line, that really judgment kicks in. Right. And, I've said it on a post sometime on LinkedIn that, judgment is something that shakes the shareholders' revenues, right? It moves markets because it is really about the vision of a leader, which helps him take the right calls through, instinct, gut, and by a little amount of data, right? Not necessarily completely fact based. Yeah. And that's where judgment comes in. Yeah. Now, judgment is something that you probably need even as an ASM at the start of a career. But the proportions of these three skills is what changes over time. As you start your career, it's all about drive. In the middle, it's mostly about influence, and then finally it is judgment which kicks in. But really, these are the three skills that you really need to be aware of and proactively build as you go through your career journey.
Great. This is really helpful, actually. The next one, very much related to the marketing stuff, is that in your own words, what's the role performed by a marketing person in an organization?
I love to make this statement because I think it bursts a lot of myths, especially for me. As I came into marketing, as all through my career, I've had people saying that there's not enough marketing on my portfolio, or ad kab banayenge. I mean, is it really my job to do all this number working? I think it's a sales problem. We have heard all of these statements all through our career. Right. But really, the crystal clarity that I got somewhere midway through my journey is that there is no problem which is not a marketing problem. Every problem is a marketing problem. And the reason why every problem is a marketing problem is because marketeers are nothing but entrepreneurs, which are hired by companies to run their business models. As an entrepreneur, you have to rally the organization. You have to manage the sentiment. You need to give confidence that all that is going on. If the sales team is not driven towards driving your distribution targets, it's your problem. You're the marketing guy. You're the one who's to pull the entire thing together, right? There is no problem that you can say is not a marketing problem. In fact, every problem is a marketing problem because your job is not to make ad campaigns. You're an entrepreneur. You're running the show, right? Your job is to show the leadership.
It's such an all-encompassing thing, and we used to study inside MBA as well, sort of like sales is a part of marketing. Like it should not be considered to be outside marketing. Like the marketing encompasses the entire stuff.
Yeah. So see, as you get into a marketing role, what you really realize is that you are working with a cross-functional team. And how every project in marketing starts is that you try to get an idea. You can try to get an issue from the market. So you understand either sales is dripping or the business is not rising. Yeah. Then you go and huddle with your R&D folks and say that is there a solution linked to the product that we can build a specification or a brief. Yeah. Then we take those specifications to our procurement and a supply chain guy, saying that is there any inherent efficiencies that we can unlock? Is there a product modification that we can do? Right. Then we take that case really to the finance team. The finance team will help us figure out, whether what we are proposing makes business sense or does it not make any business sense, right? Once we pull that all together, we take it to the executive committee, get a sign off, and we really run our initiatives, right? Now, sales for me are the place where the symptom erupts. It's like when you get a fever, sales is right on the surface. If your stuff is not selling, you can really diagnose the problem there. And hence, a crucial knowledge and experience in sales is very critical for a marketer to diagnose problems early. See, if I have a hypothesis, that, a category or in a B category is going to rise during the pandemic, the first thing that I will do is I'll open up my sales numbers. If I have a hypothesis and if it genuinely is making consumer and business sense, the visible markers of it will already be there in my sales numbers. And hence sales is the largest diagnosis tool that a marketer has. And similarly, it's foolish to build a marketing plan and not expect it to have an impact on sales, right? You might say that there's a lag effect, lead effect, all of those things you might say, but finally everything starts and ends with your business delivery. Right. And hence, I always say that for any marketer, it's very crucial to have done adequate time in sales. And even if you are a CMO today or tomorrow, right, it is very important to keep your connect with the front line to ensure that you do as many days of market visits in a year that you can. Because that and only that can let you know whether, your plans and your thoughts are grounded or are you now starting to live in some kind of a crystal tower, and you've lost touch with what's really happening on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely, absolutely, very useful, sort of. Actually, this is going to help a number of startups all around as well. Who are actually trying to shape up their marketing plans.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next one is that what are your views on coaching, and how does one groom himself or herself?
So, one of the things which I did for myself, right, and I really advocate this to as many students or professionals or early jobbers that ever reach out to me, right, is that if you are faced with a business problem, if you have a brand problem, right, what will you do? You'll start with a plan, right? But why don't we make the same plan for ourselves? What stops us? What stops us from saying that we are a brand as well? We are also a business. We are a model, right? So the same way that you would make a 5, 10, 15-year plan for your brands, you have to do the same thing for yourself. It's as simple as that, right? And believe you me, I was lucky to be a part of some training program at one fine day where I actually built this plan for myself, and I built this plan from a 15-year horizon, right? Where I started with an end goal saying that who do I want to be 15 years down the line? And when you try to decide who you want to be 15 years down the line, it is very important to think of yourself in your entirety. You cannot disassociate your professional person from your personal life and from your interests and hobbies, right? So if somebody says, how do I build a plan for myself, how do I plan my career journey, I say pick up a piece of paper, an A4 sheet, spend 2-3 hours on it. Just make it into a 3 by 3 grid. You write on the x-axis, you write professional life, personal life, and interests and hobbies. Right on the y-axis, you write 5, 10, and 15 years. Start backwards. First, visualize the person you will be 15 years down the line. And when you visualize yourself in your entirety. Like, what are the kind of a job you're doing? What kind of a car you're riding? How many kids do you have? What properties do you have? Have you written a book? Do you really want to? Are you doing skydiving on a vacation? Just try to build and, bring that person alive for yourself, right? Once you create that vision for yourself, let that vision guide you, right? Let that vision guide who you should be 10 years from now, and let that person guide who you should be 5 years from now, right? And when you break it down in that kind of a manner, it becomes clear for you that what are you really seeking, whom do you really want to be, and if you want to be that person, you will be 15 years later. There is an immediate deadline of the last 5 years, of the next 5 years, and let me start planning for the next 5. Let me do my real best to be that person who I want to be 5 years from now, and then the 15-year vision will sort of play itself out.
Absolutely, this is again so useful, especially for people who have just started their careers and who are early professionals. They should plan it accordingly.
Absolutely.
Another one, what are the traits of a leader that really impress you, and you'd like to emulate?
So, I've been lucky to have seen a lot of leaders up close, right? And, they, while many of them have their differences, some are good in certain things, some are good in the others, right? But yet, they have certain things in common, right? And before I come to, what are those key, skills of a behavior that I admire, let me just tell you of another anecdote which sort of happened about 5 to 7 years back. So I've always been very passionate about feedback. I've always been very passionate about trying to grow myself. But, again, the same book, The Strength Finder, it told me that, as we try to grow ourselves, why don't we try to maximize our strengths rather than trying to cover our weaknesses, right? And when you try to maximize your strengths, when you become more of who you are, that's where authenticity comes. Yeah. And hence, the first mark of a great leader for me is his authenticity, right? And an authenticity is when that person is genuinely, pleased to be who he is. And if that means he's not going to be liked by everybody, so be it. If that means that he will have some criticism, so be it, because that person has got a particular personality which he has honed and sort of burnished. And hence, my question to anybody wanting to develop themselves is that at your core, who are you? And are you going to be led by that? Are you going to try to find your North Star? Right. And I think that's where authenticity comes in, right? The second, the second skill of a great leader that I always really admire is really the simplicity and the approachability, So I really believe that the greatest leaders are the ones which are really very secure of themselves. And when they're very secure of themselves, they do not really create those boundaries, or they don't really keep themselves as formal. They're very happy to have a genuine and simple conversation, because they are genuinely comfortable in their own skin, right? And hence, after authenticity, the second skill of a great leader that I would always call out, right, is their approachability or the simplicity, right? And finally, the last skill, which I always really admire of great leaders, is their degree of ownership. They always treat the business as their own business, and then there is no room for posturing there. I mean, one of the words that I dislike about certain leaders of the journey is when they try to create a posture, where they try to create a functional lens, where they say that, oh, I happen to belong to this function, and hence I should be coming with this point of view. I'm supposed to do that. No, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to simply say, this money is my money, this business's money is my money. We are all in here to make this work. And if I was running my own organization, if this was with my own cash, I wouldn't be taking postures or taking silly stances at that time. Yeah. And hence, again, the fact that really comes in is this sense of ownership, this sense of I am genuinely interested in doing the right thing. I'm not interested in doing something which a report says this or I said that. It's not about all of that. It's about what is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do comes in when you are genuinely driven by ownership and by the fact that this money is my money and it is not somebody else that I'm working for.
That's true. What we can say that a sense of entrepreneurship, and inside the organization, that's sometimes called entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's all about the fact that, whenever it comes to even small decisions like, what's in my travel budget, or, am I making the right spends for my brands, right? The simple question that I always ask with anybody who works with me, that if it was your company and it was your own money, would you do exactly the same thing? If that's what you will do, then it is fine. If you're doing it because I have this budget pending, or I'm a part of this organization, or last time we did this, then it's probably the wrong decision. The question is, if it was your own money, would you do exactly this? And if the answer is right, then you're probably following the right parameter.
Yeah. So, Saurabh, the next thing is, what's the culture that you'd like to engineer within your team?
Sure. So see, I'm as an individual, a risk-taking person. I'm a person who's, brutally frank. I'm very honest. I'm extremely passionate, and frankly speaking, I don't really have any boundaries, right? So the culture that I would like to engineer in my team always is, one of fearlessness. There you go out there, be fearless, do the brave thing, do the right thing, right? And hence, that's one thing that I would always like to put in. The second, part of the culture which I would like to always engineer is one of informality. It's not about ranks and designations and marks, right? And finally, it's about passion. It's about really going out there and making a genuine difference because you really love to do it, rather than it is something that somebody has told you to do it, right? And I think these are some of the things which also talks about attitude. And finally, I believe it's attitude which makes all the difference, and it's a positive and a clear sighted direction, right, which is driven by positivity is what I like to engineer.
And now, coming to failures, maybe we can call it a failure or maybe a challenge, but what does a manager really learn from failures?
And I think this is an important question because I think all through your journey, I don't think there will be a single leader out there who would have not had an off innings. Like you have every cricketer who has had an off season for a few years, maybe, right? Similarly, every great manager out there would have had a bad time. I mean, Mr. Steve Jobs himself lost his company for a couple of years. So if he could, be in a tough soup, we are not indefensible, or we are not, likely to have a great time all the time, right? We will have tough times in our career, right? Now, I always feel it is better to have bad innings earlier in your career, right, rather than later in your career, because early in your career, what you have to lose is much smaller, right? And hence, when people sort of worry about, why is the pandemic happening now and so on and so forth, I would say, hurrah for you. It's far better to have a tough time at the start of your career where you learn something from it, right? Rather than later where where the price to bear is so much larger, right? Now, what I learned from my career were my failures, or the time when I had my off innings, is because I deeply introspected and said, what did I do wrong? And when I did that, actually, what emerged is that I have certain flaws in my personality, right, which come out in times of pressure and the times that I'm not doing well, and those flaws in my personality is very important for me to be aware of. Right, and very interestingly, I just did a assessment, like I talked about the Gallup study. Similarly, there is another assessment called the Hogan assessment, which is done by my employer, right, for us, where again it tells you on what are some of the challenging areas in your personality in your life, right? And identifying some of these, help me understand what should I not allow to go wrong in the future, right? And to help demystify that, I think the one area that none of us are great at is in managing change, right? We're all good at decoding what's the expectations, and we're all good at sort of continuing to do what is right. But when things change, when leaders change, when culture changes, when there is a takeover of a company, right? When things change very quickly, we are not very adaptable. It takes us some time. It's like your life and your personality is like a running engine. Just because there is a stop sign or a go or a detour does not mean that you'll start running at a slower pace, right? But and such an incident happened to me when Cadbury was being taken over by Kraft and Mondelez. There's a drastic change in culture. There was a drastic change in leadership, right? And the right thing to do at that point in time would have been to take a pause and try to understand what exactly has changed. And I don't think I did that. I continued, moving around with the same bluster, with the same sense of leadership, and really understanding that I need to have the maturity to slow down and see and try to decode what is changing around me, what is changing in terms of expectations, right? I think that was crucial. So I think what we typically learn from failure, or a time when we don't do well in our stint, right? We first understand what are the perhaps flaws that we have in our personalities that we need to introspect, learn, and then improve and build. Right. Similarly, we learn what are those crucial situations where things can go wrong. So now I know that when a context changes, things can go wrong, and hence I will be very much prepared in the future. Right. That if there is a context change happening, I'm perceptive to it. I'm being able to adapt to it. Right. And third, see, all of these things just don't happen intuitively. All of this requires thought and introspection, right? And you have to build that discipline. You have to build that discipline to introspect, right? And failure allows you to do that. When you get out of failure, it typically comes when you are able to climb that hill of introspection and to understand what really went wrong so that you don't repeat it, right? And I think that is only something that you can do once you face failure. All through my life, when I went through the golden years, I don't think I really changed myself as a person, or I tried to adapt, because there was no need to. I was doing well with the person that I was. But when I faced a challenge, then I learned to realize that there is something more that I need to invest in myself. And hence, I would say that failure is really crucial for the long-term success of an individual.
Absolutely. So failures are kind of stepping stones if you have that discipline to introspect. If I can summarize that in one line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now the next one. So you have been a risk taker actually. So have you ever taken a risk on a new tactic or an idea? If so, can you tell us about a time when a risk paid off?
Sure. So, I think while I've had a number of very interesting stints all through my career, I think the one that sort of defined me as an individual was really the time when I was, as a brand manager on Cadbury celebrations. Actually, that's the stint that I sort of probably still hold the closest to my heart, and I learned the most there. Right now, that was a time where, when I just come into the stint, and the managing director actually made a statement where he said that why shouldn't we shut down this brand? And I was like, wow, that's a great entry into a new brand, for a young brand manager. Why should you shut down my brand? And I try to understand why is he saying that, right? And the reason why he said he was saying that is the fact that we had not made profit for the last 15 years. It was negative on a bottom line sense, and it had stopped growing. So top line was also down, right? And what's the use of having a brand in a portfolio which is neither growing nor profitable? Yeah, and hence it really challenged me. So it really got me to try to now really run this like an entrepreneur, right? And I try to decode what was not working. So I realized there were a few things which are not working, right? And at least that was my understanding as a young brand manager at that time. One of the things was I think we were trying to be perfectionists. So the teams before me, they would wait till the last day of the last deadline to close the packaging design. And questions like, does the cashew look like the cashew, right? On a pack, right? That was really crucial. And I said, yeah, none of those matters. It's not about getting the perfect pack. It's about getting the bloody packs in the market at the right time, because there is Diwali and Rakhi and it is really linked to an end goal, right? And I said, you know what? Pile on all the risk onto me. I will take the calls. I will try to protect my cross-functional team stakeholders. I will try to, ahead of the time, bet on what are the volumes, what are the ambitions, because you know what? A boy with an Excel sheet can probably do a better job than all the managers in the country when you have to make very simple, straightforward decisions, right? And we really ran it like that. We took calls early, we started things early, we really put them down. Yeah. And then all through that stint, there were various risks to be taken. So for example, one of the biggest risks is, and the way it played out over those 4 years, we went from 24 SKUs down to 8 SKUs, right? And that's very counterintuitive, because for gifting, the common belief was that consumer wants novelty, he wants change. So the more SKUs, the better, right? And every year when they wanted some more volume, we could add 2 more SKUs, right? I said, no, I don't think so. All the consumer wants is a SKU at a particular price point. And as long as you covered all the price point, you don't need any more, right? You don't need to have different packs on Rakhi and Diwali. Consumer does not even remember what he gifted the last time, right? So there were a lot of calls which are very counterintuitive to the prevailing hypothesis around gifting, and I was in the center point to drive that, right? Again, one such call that was there was, I doubled the price difference of the chocolates within the pack, right? And the worry was consumer is going to reject it. I said, I've done my consumer immersions. Consumers are not even aware of how many chocolates and what is the MRP, right? The only person who's aware of that is the retailer. So I need to provide a cut-off coupon on the back of pack. So after Diwali is over, he tears it off, gives it back to me, I'll give him the money difference. So all of these look like very simple, intuitive calls, but they needed to battle through various rounds of leadership, because, there is a way of doing things. And when you change that, there is skepticism. So there was a belief that, consumer will stop buying because you increase the price difference. If you give the price difference coupon back to the retailer, they will be ramping, and he will not care about selling his stock. And there were all of these skepticism. But luckily I was able to earn the trust of my management as well as my cross-functional team, and we really battled for each other. So I needed the finance guy to bat for me here. I batted for somebody else. And really, when you build that atmosphere of trust and you are, working like an entrepreneurial team, that's the time when, these calls get taken and you sort of, make these risks happen.
And that's so important, Saurabh, because, whatever small experience that I had, I have observed this, if you create a trust, across the team, right? Maybe even if you are into the projects team, you have to take that procurement guy into the trust, and, the things actually start working out.
Absolutely. It's, I really believe that, if you have a meeting, right, or as a marketeer with a project team, you should spend the lion's part of your time aligning people to strategy, about getting them excited about seeing the vision, rather than only hammering them on timelines. And I always like to create the carrot rather than the stick. So when we are all driven towards, meeting a particular deadline, I would rather say, I'm going to take you guys drinking if you hit this deadline, rather than saying that I'm going to screw all of you if this doesn't happen.
Right. And that speaks a lot about your leadership style.
Right.
Now, the next one, lot of job seekers inside the market who are actually seeking out jobs in marketing. Your advice to them?
So, one of the things which I feel very crucial for everybody to realize, right, is that, your career is not a 5, 10, 15-year career, right? All of your career is a 40-year-long career, right? And the pandemic can disrupt maybe 1.5, 2 years of it, right? So your decisions have to be driven by the long term. Your decisions have to be driven by the person that you want to be, right, and the career that you want to lead, right? And I take a lot of this from Chandramouli. God bless his soul. He had written this beautiful book by the name of Catalyst, right? And there were some of these things that he told us when we were in the organization with him, where he said that your 40 years is like a 2020. The first 20 years you learn, the next 20 years you deliver, right? And in the first 20 years it's really important to seek experience from large brands, right? So choose that boring job, right? Don't necessarily have to work for a startup, and you don't necessarily have to have the most exciting job on the planet. You have enough time for excitement. Invest time in learning right now, right? And you should chase the right money to earn, but the right money which you're chasing is only because you want to be valued, right? So as long as you are being valued with the right position and right designation, till that time you should chase the money, but not beyond that. After that, the money doesn't matter, right? Because the money is something that will sort itself out over through your career, right? So look for consistency, look for large stints, look for long stints. Try to spend as much time with an organization of your choice, right? Again, I've seen a lot of people who keep jumping from the frying pan into the fire and then into a volcano, right? Because they they join companies with a flawed view of right now I can only get this, so there is nothing else which I can get, and so on and so forth, right? Also, when people change their jobs, they all start from the point of view of saying that is this better than my current job, right? But what I've learned that it's like a P&L. There is a asset and there is a liability. When you exit a company, there is something that you will lose, right? When you enter a new company, you might get something. There might be something which is not great, but it is better for you to know all of those before you join the company, right? So, for example, I'm a great fan. I mean, I am a great fan of picking up these vibes. So before I joined Britannia, I actually went to the office and I tried to understand what does the vibe feel like? Is it a culture that I'll be a part of? Right. And I knew what are the flaws of any company that I worked in before I joined that company. Right. And so when you join that company, you give it your damnedest, you give it your best, because you say that what, I've taken this decision with all my awareness. I'm not just running helter skelter. Right. So I think for a career, it is very, very important to ensure that every single call that you take sort of matters. Then do not shift a job unless you have banked that state. So, for example, 2 to 3 years is the minimum that you need to spend in a role to get a credit for. You can have 6 jobs in your career in which you've done 1.5 years each. You'll have learned nothing from them. You'll get no credit for any of them, right? And really, the largest parts of a credit come from the largest roles or the largest amount of time that you spend. So, even if you join an industry or a category which is not your end goal, at least spend your 2 to 3 or 4 years there so that you bank those learnings. And later, when you quote those learnings or use it somewhere, that stuff has been of some relevance and use to you, right? And hence, I think it's all about being, very patient, methodological, doing the hard work before taking calls and not taking calls in a hurry. Because finally, the only person that you have to prove anything to you is yourself, right? So to take the right call.
Very, very useful. Very, very useful. The next one is the advice for the new professionals and the students just about to start their career journey.
Right. So I think it's quite similar to what I just said, right? But just to get into some very pointed advice, okay, for students or young professionals, right? See, it is possible to choreograph your interview. And this is something which I learned when I was giving the interview for getting my selection into IIM Indore itself. I sort of realized that the person who's sitting in front of you doing the interview is typically as clueless as you are, right? So if you guide him, it actually helps you, right? And hence, I'm a big fan of saying that, choreograph the interview. Write down those 10 questions that you want to be asked, right? Now, for example, I was never good at general knowledge. But I knew that, in an interview with IIM Indore when I was getting selected, general knowledge is bound to come up, right? So I said, what is it right now which is in vogue? And, those additional states were just about created way back then. This is in 2002, right? So those new states of Jharkhand, et cetera, were created, right? So I was like, this is slam dunk. This is going to come, right? So let me just memorize this. Okay. Similarly, in the business atmosphere at that time, there were certain things that are going on. I said it's easy to prepare for it. I don't have to intuitively know it. I should know what I'm expected to come my way. And when I would do any interview, I always end my answer with a question. I sort of tease the interviewer into asking me the next question so that it sort of just goes my way. So it is easy enough to do that. It is actually easy enough to choreograph what you should know about yourself. If you've done all that thinking, you can just play it out in terms of what do you think should be asked. And see, no interviewer likes it better than a well-informed candidate, right? So if you genuinely are interested in a job or a role, it is your job, it's your duty to read up on it, right? So for example, I have never given an interview with a company unless I've spent a full weekend mulling over their entire P&L, profit and loss statement, their advertising initiatives, their mission vision statements. And why am I really interested? Because if I am expecting to get a job there, I might as well show and demonstrate from the first day that I'm genuinely interested, right? Neither on what basis am I going for the interview. So hence, if you are planning to start your career, figure out those lists of companies that you are genuinely interested in, read upon them, research them, study them diligently, right? Buy apply to the from the right career tabs, etc., right? Choreograph those interviews, play these things out. And finally, in today's times, it is very difficult to earn trust over a screen, unfortunately, right? And hence I see a lot of candidates today doing 50, 60, 70 interviews, right? And still making cardinal errors like not showing up on their best on a screen, or trying to have the screen shut off, etc., right? See, this is a time where you have to create that vibe, you have to create a personal connection. So if possible to meet physically, please meet them physically. If not possible to meet them physically, your interviewer physically, get to know something about that person. Go through their LinkedIn profiles, their Facebook handles, whatever it is, and create that personal connection. Because see, you don't hire just somebody who's a competent resource. You hire somebody that you feel you can trust. And trust finally comes by building a personal rapport and a personal connection rather than just, parroting your papers.
Absolutely, and this is so relatable and this is so useful. Now, the last one is that tell us a little bit about your favorite books and the authors.
Sure. So, some of my favorite books, I think Al Rice and Jack Trout are all of our favorites. Most people in marketing love Al Rice and Jack Trout, say so do I. And extremely beautiful understanding of positioning, basics of marketing, the right case studies. Yeah. The other thing, which is not a book, but I still suggest that, marketing professionals do, is really go through as many Cannes winning case studies as possible. It's very, very important to, get an understanding of from the mecca of creativity. What works, why, what are the kind of, brands and initiatives that have been awarded in the last year. Right. Again, you have a lot of case studies from Goa Fest, which is really, or the FEs and MVs, going through some of these case studies is really useful. It really, really helps build perspective. Yeah. Finally, it is very important to have a point of view on great Indian brands, whether it is a case study of a Nirma versus a Surf, about how Dairy Milk did the Shimona, all the iconic brands in the Indian market, whether it's the Buland Bharat Ki Buland Tasveer from Bajaj, right? So I think reading up about at least iconic brands and the stories is really important. It really, really builds perspective. Yeah. And in today's time, my favorite book at the current point in time is a book by Byron Sharp, which says, it goes by the title of How Brands Grow. Now, Byron Sharp has written a fascinating book. He actually is pretty controversial because he goes out there and says that segmentation and positioning doesn't exist, which is very counterintuitive for most marketers, right? But I really, really enjoyed Byron Sharp and How Brands Grow because it has got a very empirical method for marketing, right? And it just talks about building physical and mental availability by distinctive assets, right? And I found that literature really beautiful. And when you put two and two together, it's like Al Rice and Jack Trout is coming from one school of thought, and you have Byron Sharp coming from the other. And the reality is probably somewhere between the two. But getting to be fully educated about both the schools of thought truly builds perspective. Yeah. And finally, of course, follow me on LinkedIn, read all my posts because I've written a lot on marketing in the last year or so.
Absolutely, that's the must thing, guys. Even if you don't read these books, within a period of 1 or 2 months, but do follow Saurabh on LinkedIn, because I've learned so much, inside marketing, just by following him on LinkedIn. So it's quite useful to do that. And sort of, one last question, one mistake which you're proud of.
So I think it's a good question, right? And it's only when you probably make a mistake that you sort of knew that you were really pushing yourself as hard as possible, right? And I had this probably in the final year when I was in celebrations. Right, and we sort of planned to double our business because we've been breaking through all our numbers the first 3 years, right? And the fourth year, which was there, we sort of I think stressed ourselves a bit too much, right? And we defaulted. Those numbers didn't happen. I mean, we delivered the ever highest growth that the brand has ever delivered. We delivered a 40% growth, right? And the brand was at a single digit growth before I took on. I doubled the brand in those 4 years. But the final year, we defaulted. Yeah, we could not deliver 100% growth is what we had, and that 100% growth also came because we had unlocked supply chain. I was able to take learnings from cream eggs from the global team and understood that if you cold freeze your chocolate, you could double the shelf life, right? And that was a very dramatic move that we had created to unleash that kind of a capacity. But finally, the numbers didn't happen, right? I couldn't deliver that 100% growth that I had promised, right? And it actually made me really introspect. And, that's when I sort of learned a lot about myself. I learned that, yes, I'm a risk taker. And, it's easy to be a risk taker when everybody else is bogging you down. It's like you're a rebel faction, Yeah, you have so many blockages from all angles. You are sort of just waiting to be unleashed, right? And it is like I had broken through all those walls the first 3-4 years, and that final year, whatever I said almost goes, right? And it then made me realize that there are two ends of leadership. So there is risk taking and there is passion and drive at the other end, and then there is prudence, pragmatism, and ownership of the other, right? And the fact is, as leaders, you have to balance them both, and it is not easy, right? And then I realized that there is another facet to my leadership style that I need to proactively build because I'm just such a intuitive risk taker on my own merit, right? And as I move into rules, as I move towards the steps of leadership, how am I exactly going to build that prudence, build that that calm head, and not really overextend yourself, because once you extend yourself and you put out an ambition out there, right, then you have to deliver it, right? So how do you balance those two parts? So while I'm proud about the fact that I still delivered the 40% growth, I'm not happy with the fact that I let go of my business ambitions, right? I mean, we had promised something, we defaulted, right? And there's a penalty to be paid if you do default, right? But it's a sharp reminder to me of who I am, and what is it that I still need to nurture it within myself as I move towards roles of leadership.
Fabulous. This is such a great learning example, for all of us. And again, great round of thanks to to you, actually, Saurabh, for taking out time on this weekend and especially on Sunday. Great interacting with you, and I hope this session is going to be hugely useful to all the people who will watch it all across India.
Sure, my pleasure, Rishikesh. Absolutely great fun talking to you.
Thanks a lot, and take care, Saurabh, and remain at home. Don't go outside, even if you have to get this beard trimmed.
Correct. Definitely. I'm trying to look for a Santa Claus look next, so don't worry. It'll go longer and longer. All right, man. Take
Thank you,
care. Thank
Saurabh.
you.
Take care.
Bye bye.